Welcome to Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering from ELD's Time Vault Games. Here we got Rodney on Reanimator versus Michael on Standstill, the finals of an FNM. Rodney been speed running the rest of this event, now against a slow control deck with a ton of answers, including main deck Soul Guide Lantern. Thoughts he's taking a look, seeing Swords to Plowshares, Standstill, Lorien Revealed, and Urza's Saga. Just a solid mix of cards there. Standstill is bad news. Lorien Revealed. Get a blue source and allow for the Standstill. Can't take the Urza's Saga. The Swords to Plowshares will be a card. Has to be contended with at some point. Rodney does win with creatures. Of course, if you get down at something like a Gristlebrand, Swords to Plowshares not that much of a setback if you draw on 7 or 14 cards. The Soul Guide will make it tough work, though. Standstill was the choice. Lorien Revealed. Get this Urza's Saga online next turn. Having cards like main deck Soul Guide Lantern along with your Urza's Saga really make a huge swing in some matchups. Don't have as much access to it as, say, a lands deck with their crop rotations. Not instant speed and tricky, but just the sheer power of it when you get it in your opener. Of course, the inevitability of finding it off of Urza's Saga. Role of Khazad-dûm. Important role player in Reanimator now. Since it's printing, it's allowed for extra black cards, similar to Agadim's Awakening. However, it's also a body, making it much better suited for Reanimator. Sometimes bringing that back with an Exhume or Reanimate. Also played alongside Galta. Dump your hand full of creatures onto the battlefield. At that point, the fact that Troll and Grief have bodies along with also essentially functioning as spells really makes for a crushing game-winning line. Currency Converter. Defined off of Urza's Saga. And this will generate a advantage over a long, dirtily game. Paying 2 to loot. Tapping to make rogues. Deck does have a few other ways of discarding cards. Plane cycling, Timeless Dragon, cycling Shark Typhoon. So Currency Converter can kind of make a body every other turn, or just continually loot, dig and try and find. Basically, land drops at this point are going to be very important for Michael. He's going to need a certain level of interaction. Rodney actually goes for it, but that Soul Guide Lantern providing quite a bit of defense, especially in game 1. Now, post board, looking at like a pivot, having things like Sedgemoor Witch, or more recently, he's been using the Dark Depths combo. And your Graveyard Hate a little less useful, kind of necessary to prevent those turn 1 blowouts. Not an insurmountable wall between them and victory. They can still take the other path. Sedgemoor Chain of Smog, or making a 20/20 with Dark Depths. So Standstill, drawing some cards. Michael actually Swords to Plowsharing the Grief with the Evoke trigger still on the stack. Interesting. Gristlebrand think was previously discarded during an end step. Concern. Really problem hand here. Supreme Verdict, 2 forces, a Spell Pierce. This is all very bad news for Reanimator. At this point, it may be the type of situation where you need to be forcing your opponent to force pitching a blue card. I'm not actually sure that's where you want to be, just taking Force of Will. Let me know how you'd play the discard spells. A terrible situation to be sure for Reanimator. Grabbing some basics. Some islands at least. Yeah, they are both basic. So Reanimate's going to get denied. That's a situation where you be fairly happy with Entomb and Exhume. Significant difference in between the World Gorger Dragon builds and the kind of standard Reanimator decks here. Doom does allow to play around Graveyard Hated. It doesn't target, so you have enough mana floating around. You can actually Entomb after an effect like Soul Guide Lantern clears your graveyard. Put something in there. I mean, even the Troll is actually quite suitable for that. Doesn't require as much of a setup. Just at least get a body online. As it is, this is like a 3-turn clock. Kind of cobbled together some rogues and a flying shark. Currency converter still online, can continue to dig. Yeah, he's just packing it in. Just a couple of more hits. He was out of there. This is a timed event. It's an FNM. Opposed to like a top 8 of one of our opens. It may have been worth it to continue playing there, but you've got a timed round. Probably fine to scoop. Reanimator will have the play here. See if he has an explosive start. The longer this goes, the more it favors the Standstill deck. Reanimator's just going to try and find a way. Get through all of this hate. Counter spells, graveyard hate, board wipes, spot removal. I don't believe Michael's actually running Caracas. The deck is somewhat greedy for blue mana. Not currently running it. Very impressed with the card in general. I've actually run Caracas in Reanimator as a sideboard card to deal with Gaddock Teague and Thalia. Handful of legendary hate bears at one point. Caracas was a pretty solid answer. Thoughtseize. Can't take Otawara. That's going to be a problem as the game continues. There's a Surgical. I guess that's the pick here, right? It's a Surgical Timeless Dragon. Can't make out the card all the way to the right. It looks like a land. Oh, actually, it's got a mana cost. Let me know what that card in the right-hand side is, but we've got Entomb Exhume. It's really just whatever he wants to get at this point. The coast is clear. Archon. No activated ability on that guy. Pithing Needle. Not going to interact. Entomb and Exhume. Getting a card out of it. Michael down a card. And on a 2-turn clock. But he does have the Otawara, so this Archon will not kill him. At the very least. Discards. believe he still has a Wasteland in hand, go along with that Otawara, so he will be able to channel it. Bounce the Archon. But now he's got it coming from the other direction here with a Sedgemoor. Sedgemoor, of course, comboing with Chain of Smog, but also at this low life total, a threat in and of itself. Menace making it very difficult to stabilize against. Just a 3-turn clock. Getting down to 1 life, not insignificant. So Duress takes the Shark Typhoon. And that's going to do it. He's got the Chain of Smog. Make infinite bodies. Even if Michael did have a Supreme Verdict off the top, it would still be very, very difficult for Michael to win against infinite life. Sedgemoor can just make an unbounded number of pests. Terminus would answer it clean, but I don't think that's in these lists at all anymore. Once Reanimator has infinite life, I mean, they can get to the point where they're just casting their threats. Things like Archon and Gristlebrand. In a Smog, Legacy playable. Urza's Saga for Michael. Moving toward Graveyard Hate immediately and sees a pair of surgical extractions. Grabbing the Brainstorm, leaving Lorien revealed and 2 surgicals. So the Graveyard, the way is what is it? Way is blocked? There's definitely a Lord of the Rings quote in there that I missed. Sorry, I do these in one take. My mistakes show up along with the player's mistakes. Unscripted. I get a little bit of a heads up as I bounce through the footage to try and see the relevant cards for the slideshow. For example, Grafdigger's Cage. Anybody that appreciates the pictorial slideshow highlighting the cards, appreciate a thumbs up. It is a whole bunch of extra work. I do think it actually makes the videos more accessible. People starting to learn about Legacy. Storm into a Standstill. This is just exactly where Michael wants to be. He's got Grafdigger's Cage on board. We know he's got Surgical. He has Standstill in play. When Rodney does decide to go off, Michael's going to have a fistful of cards. Now, Rodney may be able to fire something off during Michael's end step and at least get him to discard down to 7. But barring a card like Entomb, fire off at instant speed, Rodney may be facing like 10 cards. Even if you open up with an Unmask or a Grief, you're still not going to be thrilled with a hand that size. Of course, the drowning effect of Standstill, if you do decide to break it with some discard and you see that the way is not clear, passing the turn back potentially just lets them cast another Standstill. That's where things just go from bad to worse. Dark, just a 1/1 for now, but Michael does have access to Timeless Dragon and even has it in his hand when he's ready to start applying pressure in that way. Witherbloom Apprentice. All right, this guy is extremely dangerous. Unlike the Sedgemoor, Chain of Smog shows up with him. It's going to be over very quickly. Now, Michael actually using a Swords to Plowshare on that right away. I don't know that that's actually where you want to be. Let me know how you would play that. And again, Force a Willing the Apprentice, keeping them off the board. I think if I have access to a Swords to Plowshares, I may be more inclined to let them try and fire off that Chain of Smog. They've got to target themselves. Eventually we'll end up with no cards in hand. At that point, it is, I think, certainly a greedier place to interact. It's what I'd be inclined to do. Go ahead and Swords to Plowshares. Apprentice once they're hellbent, and they're not getting back into that game. So a couple of interesting plays with Swords to Plowshares here. I look forward to seeing the comments and the different thoughts. Had Swords to Plowshares being used on Grief with the Evoke trigger on the stack, trying to prevent recursion. Also had it there on the Witherbloom Apprentice without the Chain of Smog. Now it's Sedgemoor. Dark Typhoon cycling for a 2/2 this time. This is very, very close to lethal. 7 damage coming in. Rodney's going to be at just 2 life after this. Soul Guide Lantern draws a card. Everything turns sideways. Plays a Standstill and passes. 2 Tundras open. Unmask starts. Try and clear the way. Don't really know what he could do to get out of this situation. Even Chain of Smog isn't really going to matter. Couple of Surgicals. Graveyard not a viable path this entire game. Now Chain of Smog. So he's going to dump his hand and make Infinite Guise. He's dead on the crackback. No hand, there's no tricks. And that's going to do it. There we go. Michael taking down an FNM, stopping Rodney's rampage with Reanimator.